Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. I'm back with one of these critique videos for you. So it's not really a reaction, it's not really analysis because I don't feel I'm going into enough depth. It's somewhere in between like an informal analysis, so critique's what I've gone for. As a disclaimer, I will pause the video, I will talk about what's going on. I would have thought that would have been obvious, but judging by some of the comments I've had in previous videos like these, it's well worthwhile staying from the get-go. The guitarist I have here is Michael Schenker, and basically doing a signature licks video on him where I pick a couple of his licks and kind of break them down. The process I go through is watching a lot of content from that player to try and find their habits and their idiosyncrasies. So I just kind of start documenting this, and there's sometimes ideas that pop up that I can't make a full video or content on, so I'll put those later on in this video that will be something like licks, ideas and concepts, so you can get to that with the timestamps. Yeah, if you like it, let me know with a like and a comment. If you don't like it, feel free to hit dislike, but if you could leave a comment as to what specifically you don't like, I'd at least take it on board and try to do something about it. If you want to see more of this sort of stuff, make sure to do subscribe and enable notifications thing. I'm sure you know the drill by now, but let's just crack into it. I think this is a compilation that someone has put together. I have to say, just as a side note, it's brilliant that people do these. It makes this finding licks process just much more easy and a lot more fun as well. So let's go for it. The first thing that always jumps out at me with Schenker is his tone is brilliant. Like a lot of the time you think of the kind of low and the mid-range of the Schenker tone because it's so just nice. But here there's like a really nice cutting to the high as well, so that's something I'll kind of, because when I'm doing the videos I try to sort of match the tone within reason. So that's something to think about as well. One of the tricks he does use is he uses his wah pedal and kind of moves it a bit forward, so he kind of gets like an EQ boost. I've covered this quite recently, so I'll put a little eye up there that goes into more detail. I don't want to derail this too much, but just here, I mean, even you can tell the video quality isn't amazing and his tone still sounds awesome. It's really nice use of harmonics as well. He gets great pinches, and I think as well he quite often holds the pick kind of close to the tip, so you get this really nice kind of harmonic attack, so it's like not full pinch harmonics but partial ones. So I think that's part of the secret to his tone as well. It's something I'm still playing about with. I've not got it down yet, I must admit. On the note of his tone and that kind of low mid-range thing, I think part of the reason he can do it, particularly in this situation, is he's the only guitarist, so he's not really fighting in the same way you do when you've got two guitarists for the same frequencies. There's a keyboard player here, so there will be a little bit of overlap there. You'll need to make way for each other. But when you're playing by yourself, you can sometimes afford to have more of these, the kind of nicer frequencies, I think of them as. See, this is a tough one because that lick to me is like a pure Schenker lick, but it feels a bit kind of cheeky doing that because it's maybe more of a riff. So let me know what you guys think of that. Counts as a signature lick or not? I mean, good to know. Right, so that's really cool. Early John Roth does this a lot as well. I'll link to a much more detailed, comprehensive look at that with the eye up there. But you see when the section changed and the kind of drums and dynamic stuff came down, you'll notice that you might need to pop the video back, but he took his hand and he like did something with it. What he was doing there was moving probably his volume pot, maybe the tone a little bit as well. So he's using the dynamics built into the instrument. You can use pot control by rolling your volume down and really clean up your tone. So most of the time it's going to be a bit more muffled unless you've got a treble bleed mod, then you're going to get more treble coming out here. But it's a sign a lot of the time of a player who really knows their rig, they know how to play their setup, that they can use the volume pot instead of just using distortion pedals. And although he's rolled the tone down and it's cleaned it up, there's still that kind of distinctive Schenker kind of like haw, that kind of sound he has. I think to my ears it's maybe sounding like it's somewhere between 400 and 600 hertz, but it might be higher than that. It's just this really nice kind of mid-rangey, almost kind of, it's warm, but it's on the cusp of being honky. It's brilliant. Those are also a fantastic example of the partial harmonics I was talking about earlier when you're holding the pick kind of close to the tip, so a bit of the flesh is hitting the string. You're not getting those full-on pinch harmonics like Zakk Wylde or something, but you're getting this nice little extra bit of content over the top of the note. It's got a lovely vibrato, and I need to try and work out how he's doing it. I don't know if he's a thumb off the neck player, but like Clapton, it's just the control he has of the instrument is just amazing. It sounds just really confident. It's like the difference between hearing kind of a beginner and someone who's played for quite a while. There's this like indescribable kind of betterness, for lack of a better term, and he has it. He just sounds. It all sounds intentional. It all sounds like he really knows what he's doing. It's just great dynamic touch and control. There, hopefully you saw him rolling his volume up a little bit, so he's wanting to get some of the more the distortion in, get more some of the gainy sound in, so it's probably going to ramp up here. This is sublime playing. I mean, this is the sort of thing, if you recorded it on an album, you'd be chuffed with it, and he's doing this live. Well, it's a relatively exposed sound. There's a nice amount of delay on it, so he's getting this kind of like reverby delay sound, so there's a bit more sustain, a bit more body to it, but it's really not front and center. It's nicely in the background. On the topic of being the only guitarist in a band, if you're doing stuff like that where you play the riff, then go to the lead and back to the riff, it's pretty difficult to keep it clean and keep everything all nice, keep the chords so you're not digging in too hard, but so the lead's still sounding. It's just expertly delivered on a player. Like that tiny bit of string noise there, you might have heard a just before he did the lead line there. That's the only kind of bit of slop, if you can even call it that, that's come up from so far, and this is live. Amazing. So I don't know how well this is known, but you see the bassist there. I want to say his name is Peter Way. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Steve Harris from Iron Maiden took a lot of influence from him, and he's been on the record as saying, well, he liked the black and white stripes, he liked his kind of moves and stuff, so he did rip an awful lot from him. It's nice for people to be that kind of candid about it. I think like if Malmsteen was a bit more honest about his the influence of Richie Blackmore, for example, had on him, it'd be good. So the same thing here, he's just rolled the volume down to clean it up. It's like guys like Schenker, he must be like, what, 19 or 20 here? He just had it together from like a really young age, just from the get-go. It always amazes me that guys can progress like that far, that quickly. Right, this is a thing that I've picked up from him. I think he's holding the pick the wrong way round, and that might be part of his harmonic attack. It might just be the kind of angle I saw it from there. I'll have a better look here. It looks to me like the pick, like the peak of the pick is pointing out rather than towards the strings, so that might be how he's getting this nice harmonic attack. It's something I've noticed it, but I've not played about with this technique. Again, if this is stuff you guys know about and everyone knows already, I'm late to the party, then hit me up in the comments. That's Schenker all over it, isn't it? A little trill and then kind of coming down the blues scale. I think there's something interesting going on. It's not resolving to the root. I think he's maybe going to the 5th degree of the scale. I'm probably going to put that lick or a very similar one in the signature lights, because that is just instant Schenker to me. I hate to pause it because it's so good, but it's cool. He's got a mix of he's using some of the licks that are on the album, on the studio version, and doing his own kind of improv in between. I just really like the combination of it. There's also, it sounded like he was using the Dorian blues scale there. I've covered that before, linked to it there. If it pops up again, I'll mention it again. So that was another, that was a kick-ass lick, wasn't it? I might have to put that one in. I really enjoyed that. That was another example of the Dorian blues scale. So it's the Dorian scale, but he's got the blues note in, so it sounds a bit more bluesy. He's maybe leaning into the 6th a little bit more than most players who'd play it would do. So people like Dimebag, Paul Gilbert, Nuno Bettencourt, they're good examples of people who use that kind of sound. Nuno probably uses the 6th quite a bit as well, so you get a slightly, I want to say kind of funkier, maybe bluesier sound to it. There's like a kind of, I don't want to say funkiness or bluesiness, but there's a definite groove to his playing as well. It's a bit like Paul Gilbert, I suppose, in the way that it feels like he knows what he's doing before he's doing it. Like even when he's doing the fast kind of Dorian blues bits like he did there again, it doesn't feel like there's a kind of random element. It feels like it's kind of, he's almost processed what he's doing and it's just coming out of him. So that's a really cool thing he does as well. He used a tiny little bit of light palm muting when he was playing there, and it makes the dynamics more interesting when you're playing kind of a lot of scalar licks like that. You bring in a little bit of the light palm muting, particularly on the higher strings, because we don't hear that very often because it's quite difficult to do. Been so enthralled with Schenker's playing, I've not even mentioned the rest of the band. They're just laying down a great groove. Like I say, it's one of those tunes, though. It's just that drum beat is one of my favourite rock grooves, I think. So that was that lick again, I think. He's trilling. It looks like, I'm not too sure what key they're in, but he'd be trilling between the flat 3rd. Hang on, I'm going to have to think what this was saying. Trilling between the 5th and the flat 7th, coming down the blues scale, resolving on the 5th, I think. So if you want Schenker lick in a nutshell, there you go. Do a trill, and then kind of come down the blues scale. So there you can hear his wah pedal in action. He's using it really slowly to kind of swoop through different frequencies, and it can make doing licks like that, like similar to the palm mute, and just a bit more engaging to listen to. You get like an extra kind of EQ contour over the top. What's kind of cool about players like Schenker as well is where he's not that strict of a picker. Whatever kind of legato he uses is kind of, I don't want to use the word deficiencies, but it's like the idiosyncrasies we all have in our playing where there's certain things we find difficult. So we tend to use like a legato or a little trick to kind of get around it. And that's where a lot of his unique phrasing comes from, that he clearly doesn't want to pick every note. So there's little tricks he's worked out that make it easier to like hop over strings or to get to a bend or shift position or whatever. And that's part of what makes his playing just quite as unique and cool as it is. I talked about his kind of touch and that thing that makes it sound confident. His vibrato's really on point. Like a problem I have is I sometimes hold the note a bit sharp. It sounds a bit off. If I've got any cards left, I'll link to up there because it explains a bit more detail. But he's just got this really nice controlled vibrato where if you imagine like the standard note pitches here, sometimes as a guitarist we hold it a little bit sharp and then kind of wave from there. He's making sure it returns back to pitch. It just sounds really like vocal, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. If you wonder why he holds the flying V between his legs like that, if you've ever played the flying V, it becomes apparent quite quickly. It's just when you put the kind of V, I don't know what you call it, the leg of the guitar in between your own legs, it's got a lot more stability because the way the guitar's shaped where the strap is when they're against, I used to have a flying V when I was back in my youth. I think I still got it. I haven't played it properly in a long time. But it gives you this extra element of stability that you don't really have otherwise. So if you're doing kind of trickier stuff, it's a bit easier to have the guitar kind of wedged in against your body. So that's the thing. It sounds like he's either got his wah kind of on, but kind of rocked down like that, so it's more of the low frequencies being accentuated, or he's rolled some of his tone pot down. When you do that, it's a lot harder to play the notes. You need to hit them a lot more kind of confidently, a lot more accurately. You heard there's a few notes that weren't exactly off, but it sounded like they were maybe scuffed, or you missed them. But I think he hit them fine, but it's more to do with the tone he's using. So because either, as I say, the wah or he's rolled the tone pot down, both achieving the same thing. So if you don't have a wah pedal, you can use your tone pot on the fly to get a similar thing. But just be aware that the higher strings in particular, they're going to be a little bit less forgiving when you're playing them, particularly if you're using like kind of like fast licks and legato and that kind of thing. It's something we've not heard much of here, but he does have a really good way, a tiny bit there, of mixing the major and the minor pentatonics together in a way that sounds not too bluesy, because it's a typical blues thing to do. He managed to kind of make it sound a bit more rock and a bit more modern, probably by leaning into the Mixolydian and the Mixodorian, or the Dorian scale, kind of combining the Mixolydian and the Dorian, because they're very similar scales, a one note difference, so you can get away with melding them together in this kind of rock context, or kind of more bluesy ones, particularly if you're playing over like a dominant 7 chord. It works pretty well there. Feels like a stupid point to make, but in all these clips his guitar has been nicely in tune and well intonated, so it's staying in tune all the way up the fretboard. You find a lot of time by the time you get higher, if a guitarist has been on tour and the stage lights are on, the neck might have moved a little bit, the strings might have, warmed up and changed in the temperature, and they're not always totally in tune all the way up. So I don't know if he's got any special tricks he keeps up his sleeve to do that, but it's worth pointing out nonetheless. A lot of double stops as well. I don't know if there's any licks that are jumping out at me as like signature Schenker licks where he's using the double stops, but there is a lot of them that are kind of sliding in and playing two notes at the same time, or holding one note and bending another. Okay, right, that's kind of interesting. There's a really standard rock and roll dun 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 rhythm under here. And that's maybe what I was thinking before, where I was saying it's not necessarily funk, it's not necessarily blues. I think he's pretty much a rock and roll player. Like that's what is, if I think about it, you think about like Johnny B. Good and stuff like that, where you're kind of using the Dorian scale, and I suppose kind of funky things and double stops as well. So he's maybe more of what I'd class as like a rock and roll guitarist playing in a hard rock context than anything else. Of course, after I say that, he just pulls off the most bluesy lick I think I've heard him do so far. Yeah, double stop central here. There's also a side note more than anything else, but his left hand, the way he fingers and frets the guitars, always looked really interesting to me. I don't know if that's like part of his tone or part of the secret. It's almost a bit like Eric Johnson. He's got a really kind of unique way or a distinctive way of moving his left hand, and they both have this, I don't know, kind of certain clarity to them. Johnson tends to float above what he's playing a bit more than Schenker. Schenker feels like he's kind of more in it. But I wonder if that's got anything to do, even a small part of the amazing tone he gets. A fantastic bit of vibrato to end it on. And also it must have been a huge influence on someone like Paul Gilbert. There's this really nice staccato, clear element to his playing that I reckon Paul must have picked up on. There's a few things that I want to touch on. Say we're playing over a lights out type rhythm. I'm going to do these in F sharp. Say it's going. We could look at some of the double stops he used. So one that he really likes to use when he's changing chord over that is this. So like I say we're in F sharp minor. You basically bend in that 16th fret up a tone and holding down the 17th fret. Playing that a few times. The way he tends to resolve that. Pretty typical blues lick. Another one he used quite a lot there was this one here. So that'd be the 14th fret on the B and the G strings. And you can add in kind of funky scratches in between this. That's going to sound cool. The final one I want to look at here is this one. So we're playing the 16th fret on the G and the B strings, and you want to add some either vibrato or bend to this one for extra kind of raunchy bluesy goodness. So if we add those together, you can have something like. Now you might notice that last note sounded very Schenker, and that's because instead of resolving to the root, I opted to go to the 5th, which I think I'd mentioned a little bit earlier. So I'll slow that lick down a little bit, but this is just a guideline, do your own thing with it. We've got this. I'm just improvising these, that's probably slightly different to how I played it the first time around, but it'll give you a rough idea of how you can use these things to sound a bit like Schenker. Another thing those videos highlighted was that Schenker uses the 6th a lot more than his contemporary, so if we put that into kind of a pentatonic essentially. You know, just using this note more than that one immediately sounds more Schenker. Another cool thing you'll do with it sometimes is pivot to the major, so say we just do something like. That's a move he likes quite a bit, going from the 6th to the root, back to the 6th, with a little hammer on the same string, and then kind of come down the scale using, I suppose, kind of trill. So there, I'm basically thinking about this scale shape, and an F sharp mixolydian, and just using some trills. So starting over this, and just using some trills. To make it a bit easier to cross the strings and get down there. Final thing I did there was slid down to the E, which is the flat 7, so I bent it up a tone to get it to the F sharp. And you'll use this trick to switch tonalities. So let's do the kind of Dorian lick that we had before, at least part of it, and then switch it into this mixolydian one. So not the most Schenker sounding thing, but hopefully you can hear these mannerisms of starting to sound a wee bit more like the man himself. The final thing I'm going to talk about here is holding the pick the wrong way. I've just stumbled across this myself, so you might have to bear with me. I've gone for a much bigger pick than I normally use. Hopefully it's a bit easier to see against the strings. So most of the time we'd hold the pick like this, picking with the tip of it, against the strings. So if I hold it like this, the tip's pointing off in this direction, and what this means is my fingers are a lot closer to the edge of the plectrum. I suspect I'm going to get an awful lot more harmonic attack using kind of partial and full pinch harmonics kind of without trying too much at all. This feels incredibly strange as a pick grip for me. Okay, there's definitely something to that. It really doesn't feel comfortable at all, I must admit, on the net picker, let's see. I mean, I can see the benefit of it because you are getting that quite a different tone. And if I used... So just switch back to holding it a normal way, and let's do normal once more. And flipped round. Cool, there's definitely something here, like I say, totally new to that, so I'm going to have to play around with it, but yeah, I definitely think I will. Cool, I thoroughly enjoyed that, as you can tell. I'm a fan of his playing. I don't really have that many of his CDs or his records, but he's one of these players that whenever I listen to him, like, why have I not been listening to more of him? This guy's amazing. Yeah, hopefully enjoyed that and maybe learned something new along the way. That's the main goal here, is to try and sort of get some information or something that's vaguely informative from these videos. But yeah, if you like this, there's more videos like that in the playlist there. Feel free to hit subscribe, do the notifications thing, but take it easy, guys. Have a good one.